Wednesday, January 18th, 1911. To Mother, Tower of David. The wind pleased me today, taking me to wherever it pleases. The snow stayed put. Today I picked up a postal order from David. In it, I found a considerable bump in my allowance. I pocketed the money inside my bodice and seated it firmly with its button. This seating I learned from my training at the Davenport Orphanage for Girls in Bath, New York. I learned how to keep it hidden. The teachers drilled into us that we were all alone. My 2 younger sisters and I were sent to the orphanage all the way from Cedar Falls, Iowa, in 1887, when I was 9 years old. The orphanage was close to my father's sisters. One of these aunts had a husband who was on the board of the orphanage, which no doubt enabled us to be placed there, because there was a rule there that only people from that area could go there. But we were lucky. We were more than lucky. The other girls there, they were all alone. But we were not alone, because we had each other, our aunts, and their influence and affluence, and the respectable surname in our heritage. We knew our ancestors laid out the village there. Our father was still out there back in Iowa, or headed to visit us in Bath and to see to the family ventures, and we knew that we would reunite with him and our brother Henry after we grew up. But I will never forget that day when we were dropped off, when I watched as my father signed off on custody. Our friends called us half-orphans, but our teachers never allowed discussion of our personal history, because if they did, then all forms of indoctrination would dissolve into chaos. From my teachers, I learned to squash sentimentality. From Arthur, I learned how to travel. He was a traveling salesman I met on the sidewalk after teaching one day in Sioux City, Iowa. He was 10 years older than me, and from Arthur, I learned how easily I found it was to dismiss my training and how to cut ties with my father, although I had learned that one the day I watched him sign off on custody. Well, we all thought we'd stay with my aunts in Bath. On the way there, that's what we were thinking, and that this was why we moved all the way from Iowa to New York. But it was found out that we could and would be better off at the orphanage, and so we were supposed to be thankful that the strings were pulled and that we were placed there and were given up. My sister Cornelia was only 3 years old when our mother died. She could not go to the orphanage until she was toilet trained and about the age of 5. For those 2 years she lived at my father's sister's house in Bath. She had night terrors and brought those with her to the orphanage. I slept with her at first, then near to her, as it would be allowed. My sister Frances was about 6, and she adjusted well. Later she became the most excellent dressmaker. The competitive culture there at the orphanage allowed for this occupation for her, and she did very well. But I worried about Cornelia all the time, and for those early years my aunt did bring Cornelia to the orphanage to visit, and we all called her Nellie. We told Nellie to master her big girl pants. We insisted that she could herself climb up the many steps to the door and join us, and all the other girls would become her comfort, her sorority, and her work, which in the beginning was only to take care of her doll and to find clothes and a face for her, because she was a blank doll. I was very pleased with helping her to set the eyes straight on that face. I promised Nellie that I would be a mother to her, and when the older teachers were not looking, I smothered her. I spoiled her. Usually this took place on the steps to that magnificent orphanage, which had a tower lookout. We went to the tower when we were sick. In that cupola, we could allow for all 4 windows to be opened to air out the illness, but also to have the view, and if not more so, That view allowed us to get away from the intense drill, and we enjoyed a new pace of life where the wind could flow and come into our lungs as it pleased. There we recuperated, vomited, and attended to the sick ones, but we also felt the presence of God, for the view was spectacular. I will find it satisfying to teach my students when they come over later today that a cupola is an upside-down cup, and how satisfying it is to know that there, in that tower, we were safe enough for the emptying out. It reminds me of how Our Lady said yes to God, allowing the 7 swords to pierce you for the secret thoughts of many that would be seated there in your tower. All this I remembered while I was walking to my apartment from the post office, holding that last letter from my guardian, David. The note was not on official letterhead. I wondered, did his daughter know that he was giving me this disbursement? But this truly was, dear mother, the end of my guardian's direct application to my aid. He insisted on this hard end, that there should be no response. He left no return address. He insisted that I be attached to none other but Jesus Christ. I kept stopping on the sidewalk to read the letter again, interrupting the flow of traffic behind me. I lifted the letter, put it against my breast, then read it again. Was it true? Was it breaking inside of me? Was David correct? How could this be? How did I know to believe in his sincerity? Do other people know this? He told me that loneliness is a lie. A woman with chatterbox friends came up behind me, bumping my elbow, and my fancy hat fell over my eyes. I quickly set to adjust it, and when I came to see again, I realized that the jolt from behind tossed the letter out of my hand. I chased it on the ground, but the wind kicked it up further south. When I finally caught up with the letter, going slow because I did not want to slip on the snow and ice, I was far from where I started off. I found myself outside the St. Vincent's de Paul Catholic Church. I could not sit on the steps there because of the snow, but I stood in the center of the heavy wooden doors and read the letter one more time. I wanted to go inside away from the wind, but the doors were locked. Well, I just read the letter again. Now, standing at the foot of the steeple, I looked up at the tower and thought about the orphanage and David's last words. If I can say this rightly, his words, well, they became an object for me to hold in my hand like a trinket that I promised never to forget, something that I would sew into my garment and wear every day underneath the lace as a foundation. It was not like a key or a latch, nothing of utility, but something quite basic, even bland. But in holding it, I felt I was vulnerable. I was superfluous. I was stupid. But the thing itself was venerable. To hold it in my hand and also think someone might bump me from behind and I might lose it. Knowing my proclivity to sin, I could only imagine the day when I forgot about it. I could already see myself forgetting about this object on my dresser. And this seeing myself as I truly was, so irresponsible, well, it made me feel sick, limp. Just like if I could be worthy of the thing, should in fact just give up. Like, why even go out in the day if I were to ever venture without this object stitched to my undergarment, but more so, I wanted it inside my skin itself. Staying in that sick feeling on those steps, looking up, it was that same feeling I had when we were sent to the tower at the orphanage. Someone often had to carry us as if we were wounded or fading in and out of strength, in and out of consciousness from the battlefield, the way my father might carry us out of the carriage after a long day at the fair and place us, our sleeping bodies, up in the loft. I can still hear the steady footsteps of a strong man carrying me up the tower. I can still feel the covering and the tucking in. Over my settling in Bedford, David had been such a tremendous help that I didn't want to end his support. He had, over this time, encouraged me to become soft, like a snowflake, not something sensitive or wounded by the world, but something that would not last long. The flake might be nice to look at before it lost its shape, when it was complicated, intricate, nice to sit with as long as it didn't talk or have any petitions, and falling upon everyone equally, slowly, making it level only when working together well with others, and even not special at all, and then going away with no wailing about the time for the melting. I felt a cutting up beginning, a dissolving. What David did for me I will never forget. What is beautiful is not the snow itself, but the blanket of purity tucking us in from the decision maker. That orphanage was a tower to us and would offer us protection and prestige. There we could play and dance and learn behind a wall of protection. Maybe that other David, the one in the Bible, he could only dance with abandon after his loins were girded, after he knew he was safe. Our Father could only work and make a living for us later if he first installed us in some tower and kept us safe. There had to be a compartment for the treatment and care of girls, so that we could learn to be superfluous, not useful, but insignificant. And with his last words to me now, I got it. The Italians here show me their work as stone carvers. They start with a sketchbook and dictionary of ornaments. When they came to America, some brought with them their favorite tools. Others became serious about their craft only after they left their childhoods. I enjoyed listening to their stories of when they knew they were going to be artists, the day when they received their first batch of soft rock and tools and started shaping. They started to see the movement within the limestone. I enjoyed their descriptions of scrolls, leaves, and other useless decorations for gravestones or altars or porch railings, leaf flopovers, arches, columns, swords in the hands of saints and angels. I loved that they argued about balance and proportion, and when, with a mistake, they tossed their hands and spoke very fast. And after their work was completed, I enjoyed even more how satisfying it was to sit with them, to swing or perch on a porch railing, and to watch them have a cigar, even before they washed their hands, and to cover their work, and to have a simple meal with friends, and then forget about it. But why am I telling you all this, dear mother? What you already know. It is time to tell it. I will take it, what David has taught me, and I will tell it now to his daughter Emma, For love of you, dear lady, I pray that I remove my own petition, and only tell her what would be pleasing to you.